So, first of all, I love the music. I was really caught off guard by how robust it was. And I
Mhm.
know you had a lot of family members that kind of inspired what you were doing with the movie, but what was your relationship to blues growing up, and how did that play a role here?
Yeah, it was a relationship that was very singular. It was with my uncle James Edmondson, and he was from Mississippi, born and raised there, and then moved to the West Coast. And he married my grandmother's younger sister, whose name was Sammy. So I named I named the young character after my aunt, and I dedicated the film to my uncle James. But I would spend time with him, and he would listen to blues records on vinyl, and sometimes he'd drink Old Taylor whiskey and tell me about his life in Mississippi before he came to Oakland. I loved him, man. So much, and uh, he, man, you know how it is, bro. Like when you are a filmmaker, and I was an athlete before that. I'm away from my family, pursuing dreams, more than I would like to be. In the last year of his life, was the year I made Creed. So I was in Philly for a good chunk of the year, and then I was in Los Angeles finishing the movie. And he died while I was in post production, like while I was trying to picture a lot. And I remember feeling really guilty about that. Whenever I would think about him after, I would put all blues records on to kind of remind me of him, and I would listen to these records with my eyes closed, and it's almost like you're conjuring a spirit, so to speak, and that was like the birth of I think the central idea of this movie.
Wow, that's beautiful. Well, I want to ask you specifically about 1932. Um, my theater, the Southampton Playhouse, opened in 1932.
Oh,
So
that's amazing, man.
crazy, right? And we're gonna do an event with the Southampton African American History Museum after the screening to talk about that era.
Oh,
But
that's
just
beautiful,
as soon as
bro.
I saw that pop up, I was like, whoa. So, and I studied a lot about that era. Obviously, I know about the movies, pre-code Hollywood and all that. I mean, in terms of, black representation beyond, Oscar Micheaux was still around, but it wasn't exactly the finest moment. But what is your relationship to that era in terms of storytelling and what was going on in the world at the time?
That's such a great question, bro. And I came to that time, that setting. It was really like a combination of just research to figure out like when, what point at which this music really took off, culturally, not from a pop culture sense, but from a culture at that local Mississippi sense, and I was looking at the ages of some of these musicians, and Charlie Patton is kind of considered the first true Delta bluesman as we would come to know them. So I was looking at when he was around, and another big part of this was World War One. Like I knew I wanted the twins to have, like, this the film deals with a lot of ideas, but chief among them is this idea of freedom, and the cost of it. And I wanted the twins to have been able to have seen the world, and this idea that they had fled Mississippi to go north and enlisted, in World War One, was something that I was really interested in, and that idea quite a bit. I think the post-war environment, the post-great first World War environment, I always found fascinating in literature and in cinema. You know, something about like being a World War II veteran is like, all right, man, this thing we hoped would never happen again has happened again. You know what I mean? But we've been there before. But I imagine, like, the World War One veteran, it was literally like nothing like this has ever happened before. You know what I'm saying? Like, somebody coming home from seeing that trench warfare, and seeing Zeppelins, and um what it must have been like for somebody, who grew up and in the backbreaking era that the pre-war South was, and then go to Europe, you know what I mean, and and fighting a war, and then have to come back to that. Like that dynamic was so crazy to think that people were actually, that was actually people's lives,
Yeah.
and so, like kind of, so I kind of calculated, and coupled with, I wrote the script with Mike in mind, so coupled with Mike's age now, that's kind of how I landed on 1932. It was like a triple Venn diagram, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
That's amazing. Yeah, and of course, like the Great Depression, Prohibition, all these. It's a great stew of conflicts going on in
I
American
gotta tell you something too, man. Because my grandmother is 96 years old, and my father-in-law, Zenzi's father, Zenzi Coogler, who's my producer on the film, and my wife, her father is 93 years old. He's a black man who was born in Chicago, born and raised there. And I would talk to them about their childhood, and I would ask my grandmother specifically, who's older than my father-in-law, so has a deeper recollection. Her mind's still very sharp, specifically her long-term memory. Her short-term memory is starting to wane, but I would ask her about the Great Depression, and she would kind of laugh about it, because to be black during the Great Depression was not much changed. You know what I mean? Like it was more like she said,
Wow.
during the Great Depression, we just saw more white people. You know what I mean? Because it was a thing where their classes were affected much more than the black lower class was affected in the South. So it was an interesting thing for me to think about when I was making the movie, where I was like, all right, if this is a black story, you know what I mean? Like wouldn't it be interesting to kind of see them business as usual? You know what I mean? During this time where,
Right.
it
You
wasn't,
think you've got problems? Look what's
yeah,
going
yeah.
on.
That was kind of her. That was kind of her. I would ask her about the Great Depression. She's kind of like, Great Depression. Like, what are you talking about? I thought was
That's
so
amazing.
fascinating.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Can you talk a little bit about, I mean, obviously the tradition of movies that were being made in the 1930s is not what this falls into. Can you talk a little bit about, making a big screen epic with IMAX cameras and, what you were sort of playing off of in that respect?
No, it's interesting, man. Cause like, look, we are our film is a combination of two different formats. For the first time in cinematic history, we used the system 65 Panavision cameras, which is, when it's known as Super 70. And we use these anamorphic lenses that provide just this massive amount of width to the image. A 2:7:6 aspect ratio. These lenses are most famously used for a film called Ben-Hur. Most recently used for Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight, and we use that in combination with 15 perforation IMAX 65 millimeter photography, which is most known in motion picture photography, fiction filmmaking. It's most known to be used by Christopher Nolan. And these technologies were developed at times where the theatrical experience was competing with some form of an at-home experience. The industry technicians were trying to find a way to up the ante for the projection format, to get people to leave out of their houses and come put butts in seats.